Hey everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Daniel, and in this video, we're continuing our series of my recaps in my 2022 August Open tournament. If you watch the first 3 rounds recaps, then I'm currently on the score of 2.5 out of 3. This round I'm actually playing another Grandmaster. I'm playing white this time, and let's see what happened in this game. So I'm playing white, as I mentioned, open with my trusty d4. My opponent plays d6, c4, just some opening moves here. Actually, here early on, I realized that b6, if I go with e4, then I realized that after knight c3 to defend this pawn, then after bishop to b4, I'm going to end up with the doubled pawns here, because after queen to c2 to defend this pawn here on e4 again, because the knight would be pinned. Then there's bishop takes, b takes, and then my pawns would be doubled, and it would be kind of annoying to play this position. However, I know the computer probably recommends this variation because that goes into some Nimzo Indian territory, but I haven't really studied it, so I wasn't too sure what to do against it. Also, I've also lost some practice games online when I went into the e4 variation, so I didn't really want to go for it. So here, instead, I play first, bishop b7. Knight f3, bishop b4. This is kind of what I predicted. Just some more opening moves. As you'll see shortly, just to get myself developed here. And then around here, it was a bit tough for me to play. Obviously, I have to give away the knight for the bishop, so some slight imbalance in the position. I do have the central control currently with my C and D pawns. And then we'll say around here is when the game started to sort of shift not in my favor here. Here I have the backward, well, not the backwards. I have a weak c3 pawn, which can, there's going to be a lot of pressure exerted against it. Here, bishop takes c4, oh, rook d2 firstly, my bad. Queen d6, bishop takes. And then here I realized that there was going to be some pressure put against me. After rook f to c1, this pawn is currently defended only once. I need to defend it again. There's also a couple ways to go about this. Queen e3, queen d3, for example. Rook c2 as well. Rook d3 as well, actually. Here, the computer suggests queen to e3. However, in the game, I end up playing the move rook d to c2. This isn't good because of the impending b5, b4, and taking advantage of the pressure against my rooks on the c file. Here, for some completely odd reason, I completely missed that after b5, and then obviously with the impending b4. So here, I mean, I just create some lift for my king, h3, so that when b4 comes, I don't get blown off the board because of some back rank weakness. And here, I completely missed my opponent's move, queen to c6. I thought my opponent was going to dive into a3, where I had queen to d2, and I should be consolidating, I was hoping. But queen to c6 is really brutal. 3 pieces on the c file, and there's no way to actually defend myself against this pin. b4, if I take, then I would lose a rook. So that's why I don't know why, but I completely missed this move. And then here, I knew I was dead lost. a3, a5 to support b4. And here I tried to consolidate. Here we got the queen trade, and after the queen trade, I was decently. I thought there were maybe some outside chances that I could maybe draw this game. Winning, obviously, in this case is not a possibility. I'm down a pawn. This pawn is really close to queening, 2 squares only. There's 2 rooks supporting it, so there's no way I'm going to win this game. Rook d1 to defend this pawn. G6. I play king f1. Maybe king e2, and like maybe I can win this pawn and try to get my king back. But I was just trying to create some outside chances. King h6. King h6 is actually a bit of an inaccuracy here. The reason why is I get the move d5 in. So in this type of a scenario, I want to trade as many pawns as possible, so that I can get as much drawing chances as possible. Because with the less pawns, the better chance for me to draw. So here, d5 is really important, because if you don't take, then I'm going to play d6, and I'm going to get the necessary counterplay I want with the passed pawn. If you take after rook takes, you'll realize that the king is actually cut off. So this is why this is beneficial for me, and why king h6 is a bit of an inaccuracy. because then you have to play another move in order to set up the king to be able to come back and then like try to advance forwards. But here obviously takes is the best move because you don't want to allow me to get the past d pawn. Rook takes and you realize that the king is cut off. And then here rook c7, my opponent just trying to defend the f7 weakness possibilities. And here I come back with the king. I want to play king to g3 and then f4 and consolidate my position. And then I get actually what I want. So I had a feeling that I was consolidating here. F4. This is everything I want. And then here I play rook d6. My opponent's idea is to play rook b2. I play rook d6 to drive my opponent's king back one file. He can't step forward because of my f pawn. And then I can come back so that the king's only on the 7th rank instead of the 6th rank. Come back right away, then there's king e6, and then my opponent maybe can get in. And then here rook back to d3, rook to b3, defending the pawn. Here I play rook e3. I realized that here I think my opponent can actually break through because I can just shuffle back and forth. So I had feelings that this might actually be a draw. My opponent tries to create some counterplay here with king h6. I just shuffle back and forth, not much to it. Here h6, my opponent tries to break with g5. But here I realized that f4 was actually really useful now because after a move like g5, I actually have rook f3 now. And then if you trade, I had evaluated that this position should be a draw. Because after something like this, and king 2 here, I had evaluated this something similar to like a draw. This pawn is obviously attacked. I have f4, f5, f6. And actually in this type of a position, there's maybe even chances for me to win. So I really like this position a lot. And I knew this would at least probably be a draw. So here, that's why I wasn't scared of the endgame if we end up trading rooks, because after king takes f4, I evaluated this position should be alright for me. So in the game, my opponent ended up playing g takes f4 anyways, and we actually ended up trading rooks, but instead of going to h4, my opponent went back to g6. Here I play king e5, trying to get active. There's actually some threats here. If king g5, for example, then f4 is auto draw. No way to defend f5, and the 2-on-1 here should be a complete draw because this rook is so passive here, having to defend this pawn. Here my opponent plays rook a3. I've dropped my rook back to c1, just basically a nothing move per se. Rook a2, we trade pawns here. And this 2-on-1 I knew was a complete draw. I play rook g3, and then here I cut my opponent's king off with rook g8. So now my opponent's king is completely cut off. Basically, you can try to take this pawn, but this pawn is going to be falling soon. Rook f3, rook g7. I'm not worried about dropping this pawn because I would take f5. Here's some shuffling. Here is the only critical moment in this type of a situation. Rook f8 is actually the only move. Every other move, there's some form of h5 takes, and then h4, and then white should be able to win. Black should be able to win. Because after h5 and you take, then you can play something like king g3, king g4, and then try to push this pawn through. Rook f8, if you take, then I can take here to illustrate. Takes, takes, takes. And then if you play a move like h4, if you play king g2, then you're actually too far from the pawn, because then I play king g5, and there's no way to save the pawn. If you play a move like h4, for example, I play king f3, and this is a classically known draw. King h2, king f2. I just follow your king. There's no way to get your king out, so this would be an auto draw. Which is why here my opponent goes king to g5. Here I come back, however, and then we sort of just repeat. When my opponent steps forward, I play rook f8. And then here we actually trade the pawns. And then here my goal is to try to get the king into the corner with my rook on the first rank. Here we keep pushing, and then slowly I manage to get my king, as you see here, into the corner, just like I mentioned. And here we actually repeat it into a draw. And yeah, this is how the game ended. So in general, I'm actually very, very, very happy with this game. Coming back from a losing position against the Grandmaster and managing to hold the draw, that's something I never thought I would be able to do in my chess career in general. Very, very happy with the result. No other way to really express how happy I am with myself. managing to hold a draw against the Grandmaster, even getting a draw in the first place against the Grandmaster, nonetheless, like holding it when completely losing is completely insane to me. So in general, hope you all enjoyed the game, even though it was a draw. Still very exciting. And yeah, hope you all enjoyed. Thanks for watching.